On April 26, 1986, the world witnessed one of the most horrifying nuclear explosions in history. And to this day, it remains one of the greatest man-made catastrophes in history. And if you know anything about it, you probably know that it happened at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in northern Ukraine. But how exactly did this explosion happen? And why is Chernobyl still a ghost town today? Let's find out. Before we begin, we would like to thank our sponsor, Nordven, for supporting this video. On the evening of April 25th, 1986, a test was being performed at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant by Soviet engineers. This test was designed to simulate a loss of power to the facility. However, the engineers conducting the test failed to account for one key factor. They did not realize that the reactor was unstable and dangerously close to overheating. As the test progressed, the temperature in the reactor began to rise rapidly and alarms started sounding. But the engineers were unable to stop the process. Within seconds, the reactor exploded, sending a massive fireball into the air and showering the surrounding area with radioactive debris. In the immediate aftermath of the explosion, several workers at the power plant suffered severe radiation poisoning and died within weeks, and the nearby towns of Pripyat and Kiev were evacuated. As the Soviet government worked to contain the disaster, for days, the Soviets tried to keep the full extent of the disaster a secret, claiming that only a small number of people had been affected. However, as more and more people fell ill, it became clear that the Chernobyl explosion was far from under control. Eventually, the Soviets released information about the disaster to the public, but by that time, it was too late. The damage had already been done. The Chernobyl explosion was one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. It is estimated that over 400,000 people were exposed to high levels of radiation and thousands more were evacuated from their homes. The explosion also had a devastating impact on the environment, contaminating large areas of land and water with radioactive material. And to this day, parts of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia remain uninhabitable due to the disaster. But despite all of this, why is Chernobyl still a ghost town today? One of the main reasons why Chernobyl is still a ghost town is because of the high levels of radiation in the area. Even though it has been almost 35 years since the explosion, there is still far too much radiation in the area to make it safe for people to live there. The radiation has also made large parts of the area unusable for farming or other economic activities. This means that even if people were willing to live in the area, they would struggle to make a living. Another reason why Chernobyl is still a ghost town is because of the stigma associated with the disaster. Many people believe that the area is cursed and that it is simply too dangerous to live there. This is despite the fact that the radiation levels have decreased significantly since the explosion. But because of this fear, many people are reluctant to move back to the area. Even before the disaster, the city of Pripyat was just a typical Soviet town. It had parks, schools, and all the amenities that you would expect. But after the explosion, the town was abandoned and it has never really recovered. It is now a shadow of its former self, with empty streets and buildings that are slowly crumbling away. The only people who live in Pripyat today are a handful of workers who are employed to maintain the power plant. But even they are only allowed to stay in the town for short periods of time. So what is life like in the Chernobyl exclusion zone today? Well, it is certainly not for the faint of heart. The exclusion zone is patrolled by armed guards, and anyone who enters without permission can be arrested. There are also frequent drills and exercises to practice for potential emergencies. But perhaps the most difficult thing for those living in the exclusion zone is the constant fear of radiation poisoning. Even though the levels of radiation have decreased significantly, it is still possible to get sick if you are not careful. For this reason, everyone living in the zone must wear special badges that monitor their radiation levels. Despite all of these challenges, some people still choose to live in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Many of them are employed to work at the power plant or in the nearby towns of Kyiv. But there are also a small number of people who who simply cannot leave. They may have been born and raised in the exclusion zone, or they may have family members who are buried there. For these people, the risks of radiation poisoning are simply outweighed by the benefits of staying in their homes. What do you think of the Chernobyl disaster? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos.